Hello, everyone, and welcome back to video 19 in this series. It's, I guess, kind of like game tutorials. It's not really game tutorials, though. I'm planning some lectures for a summer camp with high schoolers coming into the college I work at, and I was just getting some practice with doing a trial run at the plan and then editing it so I'm ready whenever that starts. And I thought instead of deleting the videos, I'd go ahead and just post them online. So um, 19 steps in, there's been quite a bit going on, set up landscapes and the character, and uh, start doing things, trying to sort of introduce the ideas of game development in a very generalized setting, and using the Godot game engine for that. Um, in the previous video, we got our character moving, but there's a slight problem with the way that it moves. And, well, uh, it moves fine. But what the problem is we haven't done animations yet, so it's hard to determine what a good speed is until we get our animations loaded in here. So we need to do that really quick. I should probably slow down that passage of time so we can kind of watch things better, but I'll get that eventually. So if we go in the script, um, it's similar to something we saw earlier. We need a reference to the animation tree. We set that up in a few earlier videos. Um, They have different names and different game engines, but Godot actually calls it the core idea of what it is, an animation tree, where we have our start state, and it's just a state transition tree. And we set up transitions between the different states. And when we set this up, we included some Booleans, uh, some conditions. So, like if this value is idle is true, then we transition from walk back to the idle animation. Or if this value here is walking is true, we transition uh, from idle into walking. We probably could have done it with one. I just wanted to go ahead and do it with two for examples. But we did all that in the animation tree, which is on our player. We switch this view. So looking at the player object we put together, we have this animation tree, and we need a reference to it in the script. And in Godot, there's this nice little feature where we can click, and if we hold Control and drag over, it will just give us the reference immediately. So there's a reference to our animation tree, but what do we have to do in order to access this stuff? And this is where we have to kind of start digging around. I'm going to go ahead and create the ready function, the one that runs one time, just to print the animation tree. Let's see if we can find any useful information if we print out what it is. So I'll just run this real quick and kind of see what it is. Looking at the character, there's no lights in that scene or anything. So, no, it doesn't really seem to be anything super useful there. Uh, we've seen how we can copy and paste the property values. Let me try printing that. Run this again. And, well, that one just crashed immediately. I guess I should have waited for a warning message to show up. Oh, I didn't copy and paste the right thing. Let me go back to animation tree, extend the parameters. There it is. So, like is idle. I'll copy that value and paste it in here and just kind of see if we can get any useful information. So stop that run that just crashed. And this is the general process you want to go through. Nope, it can't figure out anything about that. So let me go back to just printing the animation tree. Um, if I hit dot, what do we get? There's some motion, so get root motion, animation, and the general process is digging around. You can go look it up, check tutorials. I know what it is, obviously. I just wanted to go over the general process here. Uh, with Godot, we also have the advantage if we hold control and click on something, it will pull up the documentation. So used with animation player, that part was already set up. Gives us some properties about it. Doesn't really give us much of a description on telling how to use it. We can see if it's active, a few different things there, different methods. Um, yeah, and as we look through here, it doesn't seem to be uh, much useful. So sometimes it takes a little bit of digging around. For this one, you probably would have to go actually do some searching and try to find it. I just wanted to go through the process there because sometimes that method doesn't really reveal much. Uh, what it turns out to be is this one is a dictionary, and then our parameters over here are keys in that dictionary. Not a very intuitive one. The uh, this sort of animation state machine and then setting up parameters to control it is consistent across all of our major game engines, but they all use drastically different syntax once we get over to the script. So just to go through this real quick, I'll just throw it in here. And sometimes we can dig through and print things out, check documentation, maybe find stuff. But this is one that reading the documentation and printing things out probably is not going to be very helpful. So we just have two animations. One of them were for walking and one of them for idling. And in the last video, we set up our movement. So that happens here. We're either moving in this block or this is the block when we're not moving. So I will just set up the animations here. And um, the concept, the logic of how this works is consistent across all our major game engines, but we use drastically different syntax. So I'm just going to throw the Godot syntax in here because this tutorial, these videos aren't really aren't supposed to be a Godot specific thing, trying to talk about general game development. And that thing I started doing earlier, printing out values, see what we can find, checking the documentation. That's what you normally want to do. And if you have to go dig it up, I might as well go over this. Something I always like to point out in the classes I teach is always look at documentation first. And, well, like in this case, we just looked through here and it didn't seem to help at all. It didn't make a lick of sense. But look at documentation is the user manual. You want to be able to make sense of this. So when you go look up tutorials, use the tutorials to learn to read the documentation. Uh, Instead of just learning that one function, putting that in, and then having to go to another tutorial the next time you go, look at the documentation first. It's probably not going to make a lick of sense, especially the first few times. Then go find a tutorial. And when you come back, use that tutorial to learn to read the user manual. So then you don't get stuck in that loop like so many people have where they don't really know how to do much other than go look up a tutorial. You want to be able to find what you need from either the software you're using directly or from the documentation because tutorials also only show the first couple steps. This one I have already looked up, so I'll just spit it out here because this is general game development and all of our game engines use a different syntax for this same tool. In Godot, it happens to be a dictionary, so we need the name of it, and then we're going to index it via a string, and that string is this copy property path that we get here. Paste that in, and that's the key to that parameter in the dictionary. Um, Same thing on the next one. I'll copy the property path and animation tree this path. And let's see, this is the branch where we're moving, which means idle will be set to false and walking will be set to true. Whoops, let me try spelling that correctly. And then on the other branch, we would just do the opposite. And this will work for our examples here. But as games get more complicated, you'll probably want to set everything up in its own method, right? Have your movement in one method and then the animation parameters are in another and get more fine-grained control over it. Or as your project gets bigger, break it down into smaller and smaller pieces because they're easier to work with. That should be enough for this. Oh, it's still running. I forgot it was running. Let's give this a try and see if that runs. Oh, whoops. Not on the level. Let's go over to the level. I was looking at the player object, so that's the one that ran when I hit the button. Let me try switching to the actual level of the game. So now if we start moving, we see we go to our walk animation. Whoops. And run straight into a tree. And yeah, it looks like that speed is a little bit quick for our walking animation. I need some sort of reference to check. I'll come over by the trees and try to get an estimate on how much too quick it is. So now that I'm standing by something, kind of have a point of reference. And, oh, gotta wait for the light to come around. There we go. So looks like that's about 3 times quicker than the animation. I was just kind of trying to eyeball how quick he was going compared to how many steps it looked like he was taking. Oh, 3 times as quick. Yeah, well, I'll cut it down in half and see if that looks better. Turn so I don't run into the tree this time. Looks a little bit better, and we stop moving, go to the idle. Walking again. Still sliding a little. So yeah, my original estimate was about right. About 3 times too fast, so I'm going to go back. I'll try 5. And a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of that in game dev. So I guess that looks a little bit better. It's not obviously sliding around. You want to hone in on the proper speed, but the thing that I started off with, that's the general process you want to go through. Use tutorials as last result. And when you go look at the tutorial, check the documentation first, and then use the tutorial to learn to read the user manual. So the user manual has everything that's in there. Tutorials go out of date, and tutorials usually only have the first couple steps. I have seen a lot of people over the years get stuck in that loop where they can't really do anything except go look it up. And you don't want to get stuck like that. So try random things, make little changes and see what happens. See what you can find out. And always try on your own first. Don't spend forever trying. I usually say 3 times. Take 3 guesses at what you think it should be. And if you can't find it in 3 guesses, then start looking it up. And hopefully you are all finding this helpful. I'll be back for the next with the next video soon, because now that our character is well, now that we have our pieces, we have our scene, our landscape, the sky, the time's passing. I need to slow that down, turn that speed back down so time passes more slowly, and we have it doesn't take several days to walk across our scene. But our animations are in there, not final versions by any means. I got a character moving around, but now what do we do with them? So coming up in a video very soon is one of the most important aspects of game development that always seems to take a backseat when it comes to online tutorials like what you find on YouTube. This wasn't designed to be a tutorial. This is going to be in a classroom. So like when I do this in the classroom with the students, after we go through each step, then there's little labs in mind where they will try to take another step, or they will extend what we go over. So it wasn't really designed as a tutorial. I was just sharing the videos instead of just deleting them after I edit my lecture notes. But hopefully you're still finding some of this helpful, and I will see you in the next video, and we'll get into one of the most important concepts in game development, which is almost always completely overlooked in tutorials.